Hi, I'm Ketki.
And I'm Sanaya.
And we're Thinking People. Today, we're thinking about Materialists. Is it a rom-com? What is its central message about love and dating? And do love stories even need to have a message? In this episode, we explore what happens when a movie is hyper-aware of the discourses it's both drawing from and contributing to.
Life moves fast. Tune in to think about it.
Okay, hello, Sanaya. Welcome back, listeners, to Thinking People podcast.
It's been a minute.
It has been a minute. Many life changes.
How many life changes can you fit into a minute?
Oh God.
Yeah.
Too many.
Anyway, but we still found time to watch a movie.
Indeed. Always.
Yes.
Always time to watch a movie.
Yes, and today we're talking about Materialists, not the Materialists, which I discovered when I was writing my letterboxd review of the movie. There's no "the" in it.
Oh.
Yeah, it's just Materialists. But we watched it last week and we are going in cold. So I have no idea what Ketki felt about the movie. She does not know what I felt about the movie. And the life update is that Ketki no longer lives in Delhi. She lives in Bombay.
Bombay.
Yeah, this is our first long distance podcast episode recording. If we don't count Delhi and Gurgaon as a long distance.
Yeah, some would, but
not connected by metro podcast recording. That's what's happening.
God. So
yes. So we're going to be talking about Materialists today, and I think it only is befitting to start this conversation by in 30 seconds. What's your hot take? What's your reaction to the movie?
My reaction to the film is that I enjoyed it. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it, but I enjoyed watching the film. I thought I think there was a lot of people comparing it to past lives. I don't know if that's necessarily fair. But I think that it poses certain poignant questions about love and dating. And really, like, me and a friend, we went to watch the film, and when we came out of the theater, we just were silent for a little bit and just sort of in our thoughts, just thinking essentially about. There was a lot of questions that came up by the end of the movie where I was just like, it's interesting how brazen she has been in projecting these questions. Is it my favorite film of all time? No. But there's a lot of big question marks about the film itself that I have and the plot. But my letterboxd rating for it was 3.5 stars, which means it was enjoyable. It was an enjoyable experience.
Yeah, mine was a solid 3 as well on Letterboxd. So my take on this movie, I also liked it. Like, it was fun. I enjoyed it. I think it had a much better first half than a second half.
Yeah.
I think the second half had like very, very obvious issues. I think the setup was good. I thought we were going to land up in a very different place story-wise. Yeah. Like, I think Pedro Pascal as a character was underutilized. I was never really invested in the love triangle ever. Even though, so if you're talking about like marketing of the movie, it was very much marketed as this, there's some kind of a love triangle happening over here.
Who will she choose?
I'm sorry, but I don't think I even for 1 second felt like she was going to choose Pedro Pascal. And maybe that's a flaw of the writing. Their interactions, even the way in which they broke up, like none of it felt high stakes enough, I felt. I think my frustration with the movie, and I think this is a larger thought that I was having about a lot of media in general or writing in general, is I felt like Celine Song watched that TikTok of that woman saying,
"I'm looking for a man in finance, trust fund, 6'5", blue eyes."
I feel like she saw that and then decided to write a script. Like, she reverse engineered a script out of it. And I just feel like I don't like stories that feel like they started with a moral and then went backwards and wrote a story around it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I mean, you can have a message that emerges from like, the characters, the way in which they speak to each other and the trajectory of their arcs, etc. But to start with a moral, and it's almost as if she said, yeah, I want to make a statement about modern dating. What's a story I can construct around it? And that just made the actual story itself kind of hollow. So yeah, that was my immediate thought. I'm like, she didn't really have a story idea as much as she had a statement she wanted to make.
Yeah.
Which is no checklists. Like she was like against checklists. Different items in the checklist list for men and women, but she was against this idea of checklists. And that moment where Dakota Fanning's character is like, people are people are people are people. Like, yeah, okay, I'm like, I get it. That's your moral of the story. But the story is not that good.
Yeah.
What am I going to do with your moral?
Dakota Johnson, sorry. You mean?
What did I call her?
Dakota Fanning.
I'm so sorry, but I guess, yeah, I meant Dakota Johnson. Right. Yes. Yeah.
Yes. It does have a very overt moralistic, like, I guess, like a moralistic quality to it, the film. And I think a very, like, strong sense of, like, this is right and this is wrong. I think that black and white was very, very overt, which also to me sort of felt a little, I think that was also an issue that I had with the film, because I felt like there's so many grays in just in the, both relationship dynamics and how they sort of evolve. And I think, yes, like I said, right, like at the end of the film, there were a lot of questions that naturally came up. And this whole idea of, like, love, is it enough? Is it not enough? Is something that I think is a central question that we contend with in our lives, but also just films and stories contend with always, right? Yeah. We've been reading Jane Austen. Finances, money, big aspect of Jane Austen's love stories as well. Like, wherever there has been love, there has been the question of money. Yeah. It's like both of those things have coincided with each other. I think like the issue that I took with the film was that I felt like the ending, like, I think by the second half, I was like, okay, I see that this is going in this direction, and that's fine. It could have been a really great ending. It just didn't feel triumphant in the way that I thought that it would.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The landing. I don't know where the plane was flying at that point in time.
Exactly.
So I don't know where we landed. So
I remember telling my friend who I went to see the film with that I just felt like Chris Evans and Dakota Johnson's relationship wasn't, like, it only really picked up towards the second half of the film. And I feel like there was a little bit of context that was established, but I just wasn't able to believe a lot of the I wasn't able to believe their attraction. It's like, it was just I don't know if it's a factor of the acting. Some people have taken issue with Dakota Johnson's acting in the film, of the writing. But I wasn't able to just really be like, to really root for them, I think, as much as I would have wanted to. I just wasn't able to root for them.
Feel about her and Pedro, that dynamic?
I didn't find myself rooting all that much for them either. I mean, I was just like, oh, Pedro Pascal. Like, that's a very different, separate,
Okay, a question which is like, is love enough in a relationship? A related question is just having Pedro Pascal there enough for a convincing love triangle.
Exactly.
It isn't.
It isn't. So a big question about this film is it a rom-com or not, right? And I actually like a love triangle or like a romantic comedy which has a love triangle that I love and you love. I know you love that movie, is Bridget Jones' Diary.
Yeah.
And obviously, I don't remember what I felt about the film when I first watched it, but like the third person is Hugh Grant. So the in a love triangle in a film, the third person or the person that someone is not going to end up with is always just slightly like, that it's not feasible. Like, obviously Colin Firth is who she's going to end up with, who she has like more of a stronger connection with, and Hugh Grant is sort of the distraction. However, when Hugh Grant is pursuing her, Bridget, that relationship is still fundamentally believable. Like, there's still something to it.
You're enjoying that.
You're invested.
But okay, to just go back to the idea of a triangle. to get geometrical about it. For
Yeah.
it to be a triangle, there needed to be a pre-existing relationship between Hugh Grant and Darcy, right? Like and Colin Firth. There's no connection between Chris Evans and Pedro Pascal.
Right.
Apart from the fact that one guy is a rich guy and the other guy is a broke actor, which is like, talk about, ham-handedly trying to make a contrast between two characters just to make a point.
Yeah.
Like, it's the opposite of the finance guy, the broke struggling actor.
Yeah.
Thank you, Celine Song. I mean, maybe it's meant for an audience of people who need that extreme comparison, who cannot like sift through a grayer, more nuanced relationship and three different characters who may all have like different things to offer versus not, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, maybe it's not even a triangle. It's an arrow. Right?
Yeah. And I feel like a big reason why the Chris Evans and Dakota Johnson relationship doesn't like also feel believable to me is because they haven't actually resolved any of their issues. Like those issues still remain. Like what happens is like she changes her mind, I guess, but I mean,
I think what happens is she does date a really rich guy, but doesn't love him.
Yeah.
That's what happens. But more so than that, I think the real disillusionment is her, employing that checklist mentality for her clients and deciding that someone is a good match on the basis of their height, the amount of money they're earning, etc., and then not knowing who that person really is, right? And even, I mean, I guess like it's like an indictment of both men and women in some cases, like there are different stereotypical things that these two genders look for in heterosexual relationships, right? So for men, it's like you need to be young and attractive. And it's like you can't be older than 30, for example. And for women, it's like, oh, you need to be rich and you need to be tall. And if someone's like below 6 feet tall, I can't do that. So I do think that she is trying to be critical of both things, which again, I just felt like it was very ham-handed. It was very like, hitting you in the face with a frying pan. Like that's what I was feeling quite a bit. Even in moments where I guess we were talking about like, is this a rom-com or not? I feel like I found myself asking, is this a good story? Like like this Dakota Johnson, even her saying things like, I broke up with you because you're broke, right? I don't think a person who does that in real life would say those words out loud.
Yeah.
Like, I think that this is true. I think there are people like this, but it really felt like she's like, how do I get through to the audience in the most obvious way possible? Like, okay, let's have Pedro, let's have Pascal. Is that surgery real, by the way?
I have no idea. It was literally the first time I've heard of something like that.
It sounded fake to me.
Yeah, it sounded extremely fake to me. We can look it up. I don't know.
We should look it up. Is the height increase surgery in Materialists real? Is real.
Oh my God. Wow.
According to yahoo.com.
Well.
Okay. So yeah, and it was I remember being a little like, for me, I guess like this is like a question to sort of explore, which is when we find out that Pedro Pascal has had that surgery, it made me like completely lose like respect for that character.
Yeah, 100%.
Like immediately. Like, why did you get that? And the other thing is, at the end of like when her client who does get assaulted with a person that she like sets her up with, and that's like this turning point in her story. At the very end, there's this one moment where she's like talking to her boss or supervisor and says that, oh, she's Sophie, I think her name is, like she's like going on a date with this other client and he's 5'8". And like they made it a point to emphasize that he's not that tall. When before, like for her, height was like this non-negotiable. And I'm like, what are you trying to say?
It's like, wow, look at this change. She's undergone such a sea change. She's
She
become a
needed
different
to get
person.
assaulted for her. Like, yeah, I just felt like you're like, okay, you have clearly, dude, I feel strongly about these things. The kind of frustration that I sometimes feel when I see things online where people are talking about like all you got to do is like marry rich or date a rich guy, or like you have these like impossible checklists even when it comes to like other attributes, and I'm like, that's not the real world, that's not how stuff works. I feel strongly about that, but don't treat your movie and its plot like a checklist as well.
Yeah.
Like, what are the things that you want to check off that list? Like, I want to make this point, and I want to make that point, and I want to make this point, and I want to make that point. You know, it just felt like that.
I think in an attempt to like call out the shallowness of modern dating, she made her characters shallow. What I mean by that is the characters could be shallow, like in what they are, but they were written in a shallow manner. They felt like a little half-baked. And I also... So what did you think about that interaction between Pedro Pascal and Dakota Johnson when Pedro is trying to convince Dakota to date him? Where she essentially says, why do you want to go out with somebody like me? I'm going to lose my looks and la la la. And then
like it's a bad investment for you. She says
exactly.
That, right?
And then he says something to the... He like goes on and says this like really lovely thing, I thought, in that moment where he was like, he's just like, it's not about that. I'm looking for someone beyond all of those things. I just want someone who would be a good companion to me. Like, he says something to that effect. Yeah. And then she also writes him as someone who then later admits that he's like, I'm incapable of like love, which I just kind of felt in that moment came from nowhere. Like,
I think the Easter egg for that was when they first met and he said, love is hard. And she's like, when it's right, it's easy. which is to say that he's never been in love, which is why he thinks it's hard. And I mean, debatable. I don't know if love is that easy. Like, again, like a lot of people in long-term relationships would say that it's like, it's work and you have to put in the work.
Yeah.
I don't know. What did I think about that interaction? I felt like many of their interactions, I didn't know whether Celine Song was being like, satirical in the way in which they were being mathematical about everything. Like she's someone for whom her profession requires her to apply like mathematical formulas to like put two people together. And he's a finance guy who like talks in like, finance jargon. So they were talking about the return of investment on like, getting a surgery versus investment in terms of a partner that you choose for yourself. So yeah, I found those parts like difficult to take a little bit. But I think going back to the question, right? Like, is this a rom-com? Do you think this is a rom-com?
I think it follows the overt structure of a rom-com in the sense that there is a happy ending, so to speak.
Yeah.
And there's a central conflict point where it's like a heroine trying to choose between like two potential suitors. It follows that structure, but it's not comedic. There's no comedic. I mean, there are maybe one could say that there are certain comedic elements, like the way in which people sort of rattle off their checklists and stuff like that, and how insane they are could be deemed as funny. But I think that the general vibe of the film is not similar to that of like a traditional rom-com, but I think it follows the structure of one.
Yeah, I mean, I did laugh out loud when that person, the client, said that she's marrying who she's marrying to make her sister jealous. Like, that was good. That made me laugh. I also did like laugh out loud with the opening sequence of like the hunter-gatherers.
Yeah.
And how old is romance really? So there were moments where I laughed out loud. I did think it was funny in parts. I also so my Letterboxd review of this movie was that to all the people who say it's not a rom-com, it is a rom-com. And to everyone who says it is a rom-com, it's actually a fable, a reverse engineered fable. So why do I say that it is a rom-com? Similar to what you said, it's got this happy ending, which doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Right? Like the happy ending being that she gets back together with her ex, or the
Yeah.
happy ending being that despite her personality and everything that happens at every other choice that she's made, she like kind of decides to get with the broke actor. And little touches like he makes a little ring out of the flower which connects
Yeah.
back to the hunter gatherers, like all of that. So I think there are some rom-com elements. I definitely felt that, but I don't think that romantic comedies are the kind to like have a thesis statement,
Yeah.
which this movie was doing like
Yeah.
so overtly. And yeah, I think like I feel like it's definitely flirting with a rom-com, and it even is one, because I would not say that it's like, this edgy indie movie, because it ultimately, the other message is that love is the most important thing, right?
Yeah.
In a relationship, which is a
Yeah.
very rom-com sentiment.
Mm.
And it committed to that.
Yeah.
And it's like everything else that was happening, and even the fact that like love is as old as the human race, human civilization. Like these are all like hopeless romantic things to put forward,
Yeah.
even as you're like doing all your other commentary. So I did think it is a rom-com in some sense, but I
Yeah.
feel like the ways in which it's not a rom-com are not intentional. I feel like it's, the writing kind of going a little haywire, her kind of being so focused on the macro themes that you're not able to write a convincing enough like set of characters.
Mm.
So yeah, that was my eventual takeaway. And
Yeah.
a rom-com has to make you feel good and makes you want to watch it again, which
Exactly.
I didn't really feel
100%.
at the end.
I was going to say the same thing. Like a central element to a rom-com is that yes, there's a happy ending, but the happy ending should also leave you feeling good, right? Like you've been rooting for those characters from the start, and you're like, yeah, okay, I'm happy that it ended the way in the way that it did. What is it about the film that you liked?
I really liked Dakota Johnson's outfits. No, I'm joking. What did I like about it? I do think that there was the first half I would rate a lot more highly than the second half. So I do think that it was setting it up in an interesting way. I feel like I liked that, there were some shots, right, which are very, I also recently watched Past Lives. So there are very, you can tell that the same person's made both movies in the way in which like some of the shots are composed and some of the cinematography. One of the things I really liked was when she is kind of walking with all the maids of whatever, the bridesmaids, to the room of this bride who's having a total meltdown, and they look like Secret Service agents. Like, I thought that was funny. I thought that like, turning this like dating company into like, like these psyops people, like black ops people who are like figuring things out. So I liked all of that. I liked those touches. I also liked, like, I've often thought about like what is comedy, like what makes me laugh. And lots of times, like if you watch like a sitcom made in the 2020s, which is trying to hark back to like the 2000s sitcoms, I usually don't find any of that funny. Like you could not pay me enough money to like watch something like How I Met Your Father, for example. I wouldn't be able to do that. But I am seeing that humor that brings out the absurdities of everyday life, like that I appreciated in this the same way I appreciated like Severance, talking about how absurd like modern work life is. And it's not like littered with punchlines, right? Like there's not the joke isn't there's a setup and there's a punchline. It's like you're saying things as they are, and just the writing is pointing out that it's kind of ridiculous. So like even with dating, it's just presenting it. This is how people are. And you're just like, oh my God, that's crazy. Like it's crazy that that's what our world is. So I did actually like the humor. I enjoyed it. I think the romance left me feeling cold, but I appreciated the humor.
Yeah. Like how it spotlights, I guess, what people think they want in a relationship. And I feel like going off of that, for me, I don't think this was an immediate takeaway, but as I was reflecting on it, I was like, okay, I think the film does make this point in a sense. And it does that primarily through Dakota Johnson's character, which is in love, in relationships, there are the things that you think you want, and then there are the things that you actually want or actually need. And that is ultimately a central conflict that we contend with. And I think that in going through relationships and in dating people, those are the things that I think become more and more apparent to you.
Yeah.
And I feel like that juxtaposed with these sort of, very, very overt like demands that people have, right? Like, I want someone who's 6 foot, or like, I want someone who's so and so, like these sort of like very so-called shallow checklists. I think was interesting. Like, I think that was like, okay, I don't know. Like, I think what I liked about the film is that even though there was many points where I was disappointed, I just still wanted to continue like being a part of the world that it was constructed in, to try and understand these characters, because I'm like, okay, they may be like some of them may be exaggerated, but they're reflections of certain ideals, right? Like, or certain things that we've been coming across and seeing. And I think actually something interesting that I noticed was after the film released, and I guess like a bunch of people watched it, there's a lot of like reels or even like comments on, or like letterbox reviews where people are sort of like, I'm not falling for this broke man propaganda. And I was like, okay, wow.
Can I say something though? But like, it is actually, I do think that in reality, what you said, right, like the tension between what you think you want versus what you actually want, I feel like this is a very generous treatment of that conflict, where the thing that the person actually wanted was love all along.
Yeah.
I feel like in real life, it's the opposite, where it's a person who overstates how much love they want, but actually they want comfort and financial security. I mean, again, I feel like as you get older, like as you said, like, we were talking about Jane Austen, like a lot of people will want to add love as sprinkling over a desire for financial stability, right? Like, I feel like that is what we see around us a lot more than someone who outwardly says, I want a rich guy, and then discovers, no, actually what I want is true love.
Yeah.
The other thing is, she's a working woman, right? Which, like, I was actually thinking to myself for a long time, I'm like, firstly, I do not believe that she makes 80,000 USD per annum.
Before taxes.
I didn't believe. Yeah, I'm sorry, you could not possibly afford the clothes you were wearing.
Yeah. No way. And
I guess that makes it a rom-com. I guess
I guess like, and all the rom-com protagonists have some bullshit jobs, so this is probably, actually I read that Celine Song actually worked as a
she had this job.
Matchmaker. She had this exact job, so I will not call it a bullshit job, but it's not a common job, like
it's a rom-com. It sounds like a job that doesn't exist, and I mean, I guess it does, but not in this way, like in this glamorous way. But but yeah, I think the entire time I was thinking, like, this woman is talking so much about like what kind of investment she wants to make in a relationship, the kind of person, like, she really wants to be with someone who's like stinking filthy rich, as she puts it. But I'm like, it's not like you're not working. You know what I mean? Like that was one thing that occurred to me, because I feel like a lot of, like, if we spoke about like trad wives and stuff like that, those women are choosing to not enter traditional workforces, right? Like, they are saying, I don't want the hustle. I want someone to take care of me. She was never like, I wonder, would that have been a better story? Like, a person who wanted to be a traditional housewife and looked for financial security, but then discovered something that she was good at and found something of herself in it. Because I'm like, you're a working woman. You are unlikely to have, I mean, I don't know. It just felt like you had the thoughts of someone who is not earning money for herself. Or maybe she really wanted like a jump in social mobility, which her job was not going to give her. But I don't know. But I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
That she is a person who's like earning well. 80,000 is a stretch. Maybe inflation, maybe 80,000 was what Celine's Song was earning when she was a matchmaker like 15 years ago. Inflation adjusted, that has to be 150,000 USD today.
Yeah.
You know?
Which is still like less for New York, I think. right?
But it's not nothing. She was
It's not
acting like,
nothing.
oh my God, like I'm not
Yeah.
living the life I want.
There's also that aspect of her growing up poor, right? So I also feel like her wanting to be with somebody very, very rich is also in a sense like her like
But
trauma
no one
response.
is poor in this movie. Like what?
No,
did she grow up
poor.
in?
She grew up poor.
We
She
don't
says,
know what that is. What
yeah,
does
we don't
that
know what that is.
mean?
But I think she alludes to like her parents fighting a lot about money, and she never wants to be in that place. So I think her the reason why she wants somebody who's rich is because she just never wants to be in a position where she's fighting with her partner about money, because I guess she's grown up around that.
But money is still a factor in your relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think she took the promotion at the end?
I think so. Do you?
I also think so. I 100% thought so.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, she's taking that promotion.
Yeah.
There's no way she's not.
Yeah.
So I mean, but that's the thing, right? That's the impression we got of this person. Like, you're incredibly career minded.
Yeah.
Like, you're always going to work. You don't know where your career. Like, yeah, I think that was. Maybe that's the truth. That's the thing that's frustrating to Celine's song as well. That, you know, there are so many women who are in positions to be able to like be financially independent, but this old notion that, you know, you need to marry a rich guy has so much power. So she wanted to write a story that kind of addresses that. Because like, she didn't write a character who needed to be taken care of, but who had ideas about money and ideas about relationships. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting that she only thought about love after she started dating the rich guy. Like, it's like after she started dating the rich guy and was in technically a comfortable position wherein like they don't have to worry about which restaurant to eat at, or they can just go to Iceland for a trip without thinking twice, is when she's like, oh, actually, I need to be in love with this person. This is missing an important
ingredient.
It's missing an important thing.
Or like Chris Evans and Dakota Johnson break up like 5 years prior to the events in the movie, right?
Yeah.
She is just in a more comfortable position herself.
No, yeah.
Than when she was, because even she was like, she tried the acting thing for some time with Chris Evans, left that, found herself a job and an amazing closet, and now is different herself, so would look at his financial position differently.
Yeah.
And yeah, and of course she needed to date the guy who is like a unicorn in every other way, but she still doesn't love him. So yeah, I mean, honestly, based on all the conversations we're having, it's like it's a very confused movie, I felt. Like,
about
like
what it's trying to say.
Threads. Yeah, there's so many threads, and you're like, is this intentional? Is that also a part of it? Is what do you want me? You clearly want me to take something away from this.
Yeah.
And that is not how you want to be feeling, right?
Yeah.
Like the director wants to sear a message into your brain.
And I think if you know, people are watching this movie and the thing that they're taking away from it is that this is broke man propaganda, like, I'm sure there's some people, I mean, there are some people, like, I've seen it a lot on my Instagram. That's a fault in the writing.
Date the broke guy. Date a broke guy. Be the person with the financial independence and agency, and do it for feminism. The fact that it's propaganda, I think, yeah, that's a damning thing for people to take away from it.
Yeah, exactly. Which is, it's a fault in the writing, in my opinion, if that's how people are perceiving it, right? Because I don't think that's the ultimate intention of the film at all. Like, and again, maybe it makes Celine Song's point, which is that even now, with all of these advancements with women and them working and all of that things, like, there is a big number of women that still feel like a man will ultimately need to take care of them, right? Or it's important to see what a man provides.
Yeah. I think, you know, I want to actually talk about I feel like I'm feeling a little confused, but there's this larger idea I've been thinking about, which is just a simple idea or notion of quote unquote discourse shaping stories. And basically, like, because it feels like she's weighing in on a debate or wants to make some kind of statement. It just made me feel like she was very aware of the conversations she wanted to start. And I've been thinking about that even in terms of like other, like, pieces of culture. Like, for example, like Sabrina Carpenter's latest album cover. There's this Instagram account which talks about, like, brands, personal brands, celebrity brands. And there was an interesting thing that person said. I'll have to pull up their name, but they said that the discourse around Sabrina Carpenter's album is a discourse about discourse, which is, oh no, this album cover has just gotten people talking about like the discourse around the male gaze. And the discourse is about that discourse. So, and it's like, there's an awareness in creators and artists and film directors and writers that this is a very internet-y idea or topic. And a lot of success depends on generating conversation. And I feel like when that is the driving force behind something, what you're going to get at the other end of it, I don't know. Like, I just sort of question the impulse or the motivation behind something. And, like, I know we shouldn't compare it to past lives, but I feel like Past Lives is a good example of like a story that was very close to her heart. And didn't tap into any of these themes. And we would not be saying any of these things about Past Lives, purely in terms of the characters in the story.
Yeah.
And, I feel very similarly towards Greta Gerwig and what she did with Lady Bird, another example of a story being very close to her heart.
Yeah.
And then whatever Barbie was, you know what I mean? Like, what was Barbie? Do you know what what that movie was trying to do or say?
Yeah.
Like, I just felt like you're trying to tell me something and you're trying to, make me have a certain kind of opinion. I felt that way about those movies.
Yeah, it goes back to your earlier point about the movie starts with the moral. Like you begin, before you write the first sentence of the script, you're like, this is what I want people to take away from it. Full stop. And I think that often confuses the story very much so, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Recently, I listened to a podcast episode of Plain English with Derek Thompson, and he's got the Atlantic, like, pop music writer. His name is Stephen Kornhaber. That episode is called "Is Popular Culture Worse Than Ever?" Right? And they were kind of talking about how something is created these days. Like, for example, why are there so many sequels? A part of it has to do with how much data you have available, right?
Yeah.
That tells you how people responded to the first movie and what they responded to about it. So now you have a formula of success, and then you're going to make another movie, which is going to be successful. So that was one side of it. But I think this other side of it is like, you and I, we talk about our lack of attention span when it comes to like reading or watching something or whatever. But the same ultra stimulation and almost constant disruption from a phone is as applicable to like people who are creating as it is to us, the audience, right? So they actually said a thing that's like really stuck with me, which is that earlier, like right now, we live in a moment where we are very cut off from the outside world. Like, we're not engaging as much from the outside world. And to create good art, you need to do that.
Yeah.
You need to engage with the outside world. But at the same time, when we're alone, we're never truly alone.
Yeah.
And we spoke about this in our Cult of Me Time episode as well. But think about like the creative process. That's required both of those things, like the engagement with the outside world and like long periods of time spent in solitude without your attention. So they were just asking, like, what's the outcome of such a mode of creation where there are distractions and there are disruptions, and Celine song is just as susceptible to it as you and I are as audience members. So yeah, I do feel like this kind of creation, this creative process, which is so self-conscious of a debate, discussion, or discourse, that is the outcome of some of this.
I will say, to your point, right? Like how so much of the discourse is about discourse. And it's like what you're saying, which is that we are not going out and doing enough primary research, so to speak, like wherein it's like we're not actually living a life. Everything that we are thinking is based on secondary research, which is stuff that you're seeing on Instagram. So it's already anything that you would have opinions or feelings about is not actually something that you've experienced in your day-to-day life. It's something that you heard someone talk about on Instagram. And the thing is, that's where this film, you know, it just goes up in flames, because it's like, what if most people don't even fucking think about things like this or talk? Like, it's just a certain corner of the internet which is, you know, speaking about, like, is like wants a 6-foot guy who's like in finance, who's blah 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 blah. But what if, like, if you actually went out, people weren't thinking about relationships in this way, and they just have a very different take on it?
Yeah. No, exactly. Like, I felt this way about, like, again, like, I don't want to make the Greta Gerwig comparison, but I did feel this way about Barbie as well. I'm like, who is this targeted at?
Yeah.
Like, is it for like who is this for? Is like, it only felt like it would be for like 17 to 21-year-olds who are online but have not come in contact with like a feminist idea. You know, like, it felt like that, because I felt like any like statement being made by Barbie the movie on like quote unquote feminism, like, to anyone older, this wouldn't even, like, we would be like, yeah, we know this.
Yeah.
This is known. Why is any of this a revelation, right? Yeah, I agree with you. Like, it's
that idea.
It's kind of
it's that idea that, like, ultimately what is the most personal is the most universal. And if we go into storytelling thinking about, oh, hundreds of people are talking about this, so let me try and like sort of extract a story out of that, it's maybe not going to resonate as much. But both these filmmakers that you've spoken about have written extremely personal stories which have resonated way more with audiences around the globe. So yeah. I think what Celine Song was trying to even do with this film was ask that age-old question of, does, or to what extent does money or material matter when it comes to love, right? It's an age-old question.
Yeah.
Many stories have asked this. And in this like hyper-capitalist world, we are consistently contending with it. But this specific, you know, like this realification version, or like this online trend version of like what women want, is a very specific subset of that question. It's like one corner of the internet. You know, it's not everybody is rooted in that kind of thinking. The question still applies to them. It applies to everyone. But I think that had she come at it from a maybe not this place, but some other place, it would have been a lot more I guess more relevant in that sense.
Yeah, you know, it's so interesting that we kind of spoke about this in our like Sally Rooney episode, about how like Sally Rooney doesn't think of characters, she thinks of dynamics.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, in this movie, I felt like, what was the dynamic, you know, across the characters? Like, I think the relationship side of it was kind of missing for me.
Yeah.
And, you know, you mentioned Jane Austen earlier. I think Celine Song has also spoken about Pride and Prejudice in interviews, and she's like kind of listed it in like the list of movies that she kind of cites as like one of the things that has influenced Materialists.
Yeah.
I'm reading Pride and Prejudice right now, and honestly, like, there are two things. One is like, to read Pride and Prejudice or Jane Austen in your 30s is something else. For sure. Like, I don't think, like, you know, when I read it when I was 17, I don't think too much kind of seeped in.
Registered.
But I do think that story deals with similar themes. Like, you know, but the story is so powerful. And that's the thing that kind of made me think. I'm like, you know what? Like, I'm sure we don't need to go as far back as Jane Austen. But, like, you know, a lot of these stories were kind of written without the expectation of eyeballs, you know? Like, I mean, if you're talking about like 18th, 19th century writers, female writers, not a lot of them even thought that they would get published, let alone like there be discussion and debate around what they were writing. And it just made me go down this incredibly like profound like road where I'm like, oh, so much of what we create, even like people sitting in their bedrooms, have the expectation of eyeballs, right? Because they're going to put it on their social media and people will see it.
Yeah.
So
you're
it
like
made
preempting
me
you're preempting the response to your art before even putting it out there.
Yeah, or you're creating with that preemption, that preemptiveness. You're holding hands with the preemptiveness while you're creating. And I think, and now like creativity are those sparks where you're able to let go of that a little bit. You're able to let go of that imagined audience for some time. And yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about Past Lives, being her directorial debut. Like there were few expectations, right?
Yeah.
But it's not, I think the traditional way in which you think about like, raised expectations after a successful debut, it's different from that. It's like she wrote something which was a personal story that she put onto the screen versus figuring out how to make a story that can be personal to others. So I feel like that shift is very palpable, even though, yeah, they're not comparable, but I do want to compare the process of creation. Which kind of answers so many questions we've had, right? Like, why is it that things don't stick with us as much? Why is it that you're not feeling the same way about like music, movies, TV shows the way we used to before? But
makes a lot of sense.
Any final thoughts?
No, but I like that we're ending on this point, I think, which is just like creativity that comes from a personal place versus something that I think is a regurgitation of like discourse that on the internet, right? And I do feel like you see that very, very like palpable difference between these two films, and thereby the impact or effect that they've had on audiences. I think that's really, really valid. Yeah.
Yes, I guess that brings us to the end of this episode about Materialists.
Materialists.
Okay.
Money. Love. What is it good for? Oh well. Bye. Thanks so much for listening. Thinking People podcast is hosted by Sanaya Chandar and Ketki Sharma. Our producer for this episode is Saurav Das.
You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your audio content. Be sure to follow us at Thinking People Pod on Twitter or X and at Thinking People Pod on Instagram. If you'd like to get in touch, write to us at thinkingpeoplepodcast@gmail.com.
Stay tuned for our next episode.